Hello everyone, welcome to Filmmaker Reacts. This is Nabil. I'm a filmmaker. I direct various genres of videos, including short films, commercials, documentaries, all the fun stuff like that. I also do a lot of cinematography and video editing. Today we're going to take a closer look at one of my recent favorite Netflix titles that's taking the world by storm. It's called SQUID GAME. So I'm sure a lot of you here have already watched it, just finished it and are online looking for more good stuff to dabble about. But just in case you haven't, spoilers ahead. I do recommend watching this only after you've watched the show. I'll be going through some of my thoughts on the production as a whole, so it'd be helpful to have seen the show before we dive into more details about it. So overall, this show just really impresses me. So this show is set in Korea, and people are mysteriously invited to play this game where if they pass all 6 levels of the game, they'll be awarded a hefty cash prize. But the catch is, if they don't, they'll lose their lives. So the premise of the game is already like really interesting. It's really compelling. There's already a lot of other games with this sort of like Battle Royale, Hunger Games, and even Alice in Borderland, sort of a survival game winning with prize. But what drew me so much to this title was the character developments. So one thing that I really enjoy watching from this is how they go into different characters, and then they would go show their motivation or their backstory just a little bit, but enough to compel you to follow these characters and root for them. And each time you go through a game, you know someone else is going to die, right? So not everyone who you follow is going to make it out. You kind of sort of know who's going to win because he's like the main character. But I find it really interesting that you start off not liking this character at all. And then you slowly grow into rooting for him. And then you want to see this person pull through, right? So I think to have that spectrum of emotional investment as a viewer, I think that's really important. That's what makes this show successful for me as a viewer. I really enjoy how they chose to use a lot of stories. So the characters would like for example, my favorite example would be the side girl character Ji Young sharing her story with Se-byuk in the Marbles game. So they would go back and forth sharing each other's stories because they know only one of them would survive at the end of the game. But throughout this chat, I figured out why I love this mode of execution so much, is when these characters talk about their childhood or their past, where they came from, instead of cutting away to like a scene showing them their past, they would just focus on the character's emotion and the other listener's reaction, rather than going into, like, if they were talking about like them on a beach or something, it would cut to a beach. So to me, like, sometimes there's value in that, but for me, when the script works and when the acting is there, and the cinematography is just so cleanly presented, where you don't do any crazy editing, so you can just focus on the content of the dialogue. I think it was so powerful, and it worked for me as an investor of their emotions. So I think part of it is keeping things to the imagination. Just show their emotion, and just a bit of teary eye and watery eye in the actor while they're sharing their story, I think goes a longer way, rather than showing me the visuals. Another cool aspect that I really enjoyed from the show was the plot turns. So it's almost like your favorite characters are gonna sort of last to the later rounds, but then when they do actually kill them off, you get really upset. Well, at least I did, because one of my favorite characters in the show was actually Ali, and to see him getting tricked by our other main character Sang Woo, to me really showed the true nature, the ugliness of humans, and that to me was a really significant scene. It was one of my most favorite slash emotional scene in the show. So that was really like a no moment, right? Like I, maybe there's somehow like he won't die, right? But then when the gunshot happened and then he was on the ground, I'm like, oh my goodness, they killed off one of my favorite characters. But then we're only like halfway through the show, right? Or like, was it round like two or three? I really enjoyed the production design behind the show, where they sort of juxtapose, childish games, like the notion of the games, like simple games, um, with bright colors. But then the concept of it is like absolutely sick, right? They kill them off if they lose or if they move, stuff like that. But and then to go along with that, oh, the music was just absolutely beautiful. Um, the 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 music was so iconic. Like I find myself like singing the tunes afterwards, and then so the music themes were so childlike yet elaborate. They're whimsical yet equally eerie, innocent but so mysterious. It was it really worked for me, and I find myself humming these tunes well after watching the show. One of my favorite scenes that happened in the show, like visually, was the tug of war. Um, I really enjoyed the top shots of the guys like pulling back. It's sort of like going through the old man's concept of how to win the game because he's done it before as a child, giving tips. So as the tips were being, you know, presented to the teammates, we already edited into like the first part of the execution of his plan, right? That element was really cool. So we didn't have to repeat certain things, and you're sort of invested in the execution of the plan already. So wow, that was really well done, and wow, the camera angles was just spectacular. Um, that's one other main thing I really enjoyed. I felt like it was it's so hard to say. Like it was so beautiful. I want to say it's not obvious because there wasn't too many of like the rack focus or like the bokeh shots, right? But it was so beautiful to me because it was so subtle. But it's so subtle, but I noticed it. So I don't know if you call that subtle, but I really enjoyed it. Some things I really wanted to talk about was what I didn't love. Um, but I think this show overall could easily be one of my favorite Netflix shows. My other favorites would be like Black Mirror or the recent Clickbait, but we could talk about those in another show. So something I didn't love about was the character dialogue. Sometimes I felt like it was a little too dragged on. Um, at times it was like, I know the director wanted us to sort of slow down from all the games, dive into their emotions, their life is at risk. They're juxtaposing, they're sort of evaluating if they should go back into the game, or like, oh, they just lost someone, now there's a scene where they talk. I felt like maybe a couple lines could have been cut to sort of propelled the conversation forward or the plot forward. But I respect what the director's doing. So I guess because I really enjoyed it as a whole, I just sort of took it in and sort of took it what it was. But one thing I did not like was the English script for the VIPs. It just felt too forced and campy, right? Like I don't usually use that word, but it was like cheesy dialogue. It was poorly executed, and I wish they would have sort of maybe consulted an English speaking person, maybe. So I guess something to look forward to. So I've been hearing rumors about like another sequel or at least another season, right? So I say it that way because for me, I find it really interesting if we actually had, instead of a sequel, we had a prequel. So my take on it was I really wanted to see what the police, the detective, his older brother's story. On the list, they actually call him the front man. I just call him the game master. So I kind of want to see his backstory, you know, his motivation, or you know, his side of the story, how he conformed to this idea, and his rise to the position as the game master. Yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this show as much as I did. Um, I was just originally intrigued by the show's thumbnail. It had like funky colors and similar composition as like those 3D illusion staircase. So I just thought, you know, well, graphically, visually, it just pulled me in. You know, I'll try an episode, right? So let me know in the comments below who your favorite characters are, or your favorite moment, or your favorite shot, or what you thought would be a cool game for the next sequel or prequel for these characters to play. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what you guys think. Yeah, so thanks so much for tuning in. Have an awesome one, and I'll see you guys next time.